Okay, we did it. Hello.
Hi.
Well, we're going to talk about patterns and pattern making today.
That's what we decided on. Stop biting the shirt for you.
Because we get that question a lot about how to pattern.
We do, yeah.
So, like, there's really a lot we can go over.
Yeah, there's lots of things.
So, do you want to talk about the very, very beginning?
Yes. So, when we first got started, one of the first bags I wanted to make was the Phoebe bag, which is like a circle crossbody. I think we have one somewhere. Yeah. Penny, stop little on me.
I'm going to get her something to eat.
There you go. This was one of our first designs, still in the collection. And of course, it's like making a circular bag. First of all, it was 2017. There wasn't a ton of info online and stuff like that yet. And so I was trying to figure out how to pattern that out and make that work. And first of all, the way I make patterns now is almost the same exact way. There's some slight advancements on my end. But I started off making patterns with file folders because that was what was available to me. And typically paper patterns are made out of oak tag, which is exactly the same material as this. I still make all of our patterns on legal size file folders, and if they need to be bigger, I just tape them together with masking tape. And so, first of all, I've said this many times before, but I'll just kind of reiterate this. A lot of people like to make patterns using the computer, like Photoshop or Illustrator, which is totally fine, and printing out their patterns that way. The reason I like to pattern on paper is because when you are doing it digitally, you tend to lose like the concept of scale because you're zooming in, zooming out. I like that I can like cut out a piece of paper, and obviously you can print it out and hold it up to you. So it's like, just one more step. But for me, actually patterning it out, I like to do it on paper because I can hold it up to my body. I can really have an understanding of scale when I start, like right when I start. So yeah, still making everything on file folders. But going back to the Phoebe bag, I was trying to pattern out a circular bag, and I was like, oh, my compass isn't big enough. So I literally just went down to the kitchen and I grabbed a plate. And so so the Phoebe bag is essentially based on one of the plates in our cabinet because I needed a circle, and that was a circle. And I remember going to the kitchen and getting 3 different plate sizes that we happen to have, just to be like, one of these will work.
There were plates in our basement for a while.
For a while, yeah.
I kept trying to bring them upstairs.
And I would take them back downstairs. I think I still have one little bowl that's like a very good tiny circle that I use for curves once in a while because it's just a good curve. But yeah, but I would say if you're gonna pattern on paper, there's a few things that I would always have on hand. So number one, oak tag. You can either buy rolls of oak tag or you can buy file folders. I typically buy the legal sized file folders in a box of 100. The legal size are just a little bit bigger than normal. And the first thing I'll do, so you want oak tag or file folder or whatever, and then you want to have some sort of cutting board that has a grid on it, because you need to always start with something square, even if you're going to make a circle. Like
wood, you never trust the wood you get. You take the straight edge cut.
Right.
You always cut something off. And
you do the same with this. So if you actually lay this out on a grid, this edge is not perfectly square. So I always start off with my gridded cutting board. It's like a self-healing mat, and it has a grid on it that I think is 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. And it has all the measurements. It breaks it down to I think 16th inch or maybe 1/8 inch. That is not a cutting board.
It's not a cutting board.
Don't show them that, you're just confusing them. Well, where's the small one? There's a tiny one around here. Or did I leave it upstairs?
That's for quilting, right?
Yeah. But anyways, so I have my self-healing cutting mat. I've got a straight edge ruler, my oak tag or file folder, a rotary cutter, so like one of these guys.
Here's a cutting mat.
There we go. The one I use has a smaller grid on it than that guy does. That's an inch.
Is the other one?
It's half inch.
It's half inch.
Yeah, half inch squares. That's an inch square. A rotary cutter, and then I like to have obviously a pencil, an eraser. I like to use mechanical pencils because the thickness of your lead will always be the same no matter what when you're using a mechanical pencil.
This should be a Domestica class too. The other class was amazing.
Oh, thank
Awesome.
you. That's nice to hear.
Hold on. Do you use the NTC 1500 Japan cutter for circles?
Nope.
I don't think so.
I use a compass.
Oh, is that the thing that like you put down and like go around with?
Oh, yeah, I've never used that. It'd be
Never
fun to
either.
try that. And I'll go over how I cut circles out and curves out in a second.
Thread spools work well for curves too.
Sure.
For small ones.
I've definitely done that before.
In case
for
you don't want to use
sure.
a plate.
Yep, definitely done that before.
Sorry.
So okay, cutting mat, self-healing cutting mat, straight edge ruler, mechanical pencil eraser, a rotary cutter, your patterning paper, and then I like to use a claw knife. Would be my other. You could also use an X-Acto. For some reason, I feel like the claw knife just holds a better straight edge for me. This is claw knife. I can't see that. Oh, sorry, YouTube. There you go. Claw knife. It's got like a really little tiny point to it, and I like that I can like drag it along my straight edge. So those are like the materials I have out. After I cut off, if you're using file folders, after I cut off all the edges, so I'm laying. Oh, and then sorry, patterning weights. I'll grab two different kinds.
Do you feel like the quality of self-healing mats is declining? Question mark. Not that we've noticed, but we haven't bought a new one in a long time.
Usually you buy one and you're good unless you need.
In what way do you feel like they're changing? Are they?
Oh, I mean, I could see that being like kind of like less self-healing essentially. No more brittle.
Okay.
I feel like would be a good way to describe it. So the other thing you're gonna want is a pattern weight. So this is like an actual pattern weight. We get these from Wawak.
Wawak.
I think that they're based in New York
I think
or New Jersey, but they ship really fast to us. We're in Pennsylvania, and Wawak is a great source for lots of different tools and sewing materials and notions and things like that. Before we had these, we used these. These are old irons. My mom and dad love to go antiquing, and so do we. So we would just pick these up whenever we saw them because you could usually get them for like, $5 or whatever. Either one is totally fine. You can use something that's just heavy that you have. A doorstop. I don't know.
As a quilter, yes, they are. They're thinning them out. Oh wow.
Oh.
Because they're not really thick to begin with.
What's the brand of the one we have over there? That blue one.
Alpha.
Yeah, we got that one relatively recently.
The
and
other
that
ones we
seems
have are
fine.
from like college. They're the Alvin,
yeah, so that's
probably.
like what, 20 years ago or something.
Yeah. So if you're thrifting.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you've got all those things. You got your pattern weight. So then I lay out my
cheap part and not self-healing. Yeah.
Yes, which is like
the whole point.
The whole point is one. So I lay this out. Using my grid and my ruler, I cut off all the edges, so now I have perfect square edges right all the way around. Penny, stop nibbling on me. The next thing you want to do is draw a middle line. So a center line, basically. That's going to be what you're going to base your whole pattern around. That's what you're going to be measuring off of. It's going to, if you're doing a bag that has a closure, that's your closure is going to most likely land on that line. There's lots of reasons why you want to have a center line. And it's like, you always want to have a center line. You got to start there.
If you don't use a center line, you're basically at risk for not creating equal, like mirroring the right way.
Yeah.
Um,
Another handy thing to have, and you don't have to have this at all. Sorry, I should be closer.
It's basically like an anchor point or a place to always measure from.
Yeah. The other type of ruler that is, so first of all, ruler wise, I always like to have a cork backed ruler. This is not cork backed, but it's less likely to slip and slide on you. I don't like these plastic ones like this. I don't really love these. They slip around a lot. You can also, like, because they're plastic, you can like cut into them if you have a real sharp blade, which sucks. I always like to have a metal ruler, cork back if possible.
The Riley Blake cutting mats are better quality. I've never heard of that company.
No, me neither. You should look at that. But the other type of ruler that is helpful to have is a center. I don't know. I call it a center line ruler, but basically, it's got a center point, and then it measures out from either end. Sometimes that's really helpful just to make sure that you've got everything like squared up, basically, and that you're working off that center point. Penny Polidor.
I've never used that.
Oh, really? I don't use it that often.
That's helpful for me.
It is helpful to have.
For sure.
Yeah. Especially if if you happen to be working. I try to work within like 1/4 inch measurements generally, because it's just to keep things even. But like if you end up with something weird, like a 16th, and you're like, how do I divide it by bleh? That's just
I'll
like
sometimes use centimeters
easier
to do that because it sometimes will land easier.
Yeah, you told me that before. Okay. So
Center line's crucial for symmetry.
exactly.
Yeah, you get it.
Yeah. And sometimes you make bags that aren't symmetrical and you won't need it quite as much, but you still want to start there. Like our Boda bag, like
Quilting rollers are super thin and work great.
stop biting my poodle. Like our Boda bag obviously isn't symmetrical, but this is. And so, you know, I'm still gonna have a center line for that. You guys can see that I'm literally like riding a poodle right now.
Get out of here, yeah.
She loves to pop up between my legs like that. Another thing that is helpful, I'm just going to name a couple other tools that are helpful to have. Where is, of course it's on the floor. Ugh. Here we go.
Incra makes good rulers. I have 2 of their center rulers. Funny how I'm thinking about starting up and I see you guys. Do you measure twice and cut once?
Always. Always. Especially once you actually start cutting.
And you can still get it wrong.
Yeah, right. Okay, then the other thing you might want to consider having is a French curve. This is a French curve. I have used this for lots of bags, I'd say especially more of our recent bags. So the Boda bag that I just showed you guys, the, what was the other one? Oh, I'm working on them. The Chloe bags, I use the French curve on. The interior pockets that we've done now, I use the French curve on. The French curve is super helpful. I would love to find a metal French curve. Be really great. But I also do like that this one is see-through. Sometimes that's helpful.
Creative grid rollers have grip on them already.
Oh, okay.
Do you have a preference for veg tan, chrome tan, or combination tan?
Always veg. Always.
For us,
always.
yeah. Always vegetables.
We don't ever use chrome tan. We burnish and paint our edges, and you burnishing is not a thing when it comes to chrome tan.
Yeah, it's not the same.
And I mean, there are a lot of reasons why we don't use chrome tan. It's mainly the chemicals that are involved in the tanning process that I just don't feel great about. And I like the qualities that vegetable tan leather just naturally has, like how it patinas over time and holds up over time and all that good stuff. But yeah, okay. So French curve is a great thing to have. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, a compass is another great thing to have. And I actually have 2 compasses that I use a lot. One has, you know, the pointed side and the pencil side, and the other one I actually put 2 points in, 2 very sharp points. And the reason I do that is you can, because now to talk about like cutting out circles or, cutting out any sort of curve that makes sense to do with a compass. I can use that sharp edge to drag around, and it'll actually start to score the pattern paper, which makes it just easier to cut. Eventually I'll end up cutting it out with my claw knife, but it will give you a nice like scored line to follow. Yeah. Okay, what else? Okay, then you can kind of get into like using punches for certain things. So we have like two different sets, I think, of these curved punches, which are really helpful for like corners and things like that.
Corner punches.
Yeah, corner punches. Yeah, it's easy. These are definitely
usually
better. But we've had these forever, and I think we got them off Etsy or something.
Usually you're almost never using just straight cuts. Like you are sometimes, but
so, well, one thing I will say is, especially working with leather, your stitches, you want your stitches to always be even as much as possible, right? And if you have to go to a corner and do a right angle, the chances that your stitch will always land in that corner perfectly
pretty small.
Are small. Even if you start at the same point, like there are just things that happen in the sewing machine. It's not, especially if you're sewing with a sewing machine, that just won't always get you there. There are things you can do to like make it a little bit easier and like hopefully get you there.
You can count stitches backwards, set your patterns up to start in the exact spot.
You can,
but
like
the thickness of the leather, even changing a little bit, will change where that falls.
Yes.
So
So what I tend to do is avoid right angles when I'm patterning anything out as much as I possibly can. So if you have, let's say you're sewing like a pocket on, right? You typically think, okay, it's just a rectangle or a square. Well, round out that bottom corner, the two bottom corners, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to not get stressed out sewing that and making sure you're landing in that corner every time. So having these little curved punches can be really helpful when it comes to that part.
Once you have the oak tag paper pattern, do you make more permanent or solid patterns to cut out your production bags?
No, we still have the original patterns that we've used since day one. The thing we do get though is, so typically what happens when we're designing a new bag is I'll design everything on the oak tag like normal, and then once we've decided hey, this bag is going to be part of our like permanent collection, or like especially when we first started, we would hand cut like the first round, let's say, of orders that we got. Then once we felt like, okay, this bag is really doing well for us, we're going to keep it as part of the collection, then we got dies made. So die is basically like a giant cookie cutter.
And with dies, you're paying by the linear inch. So there are some dies that we use, like if the front and back pattern were to be how they're supposed to be, like with holes, you'd have to get two dies made for that. So instead we'll get one die made, and then we'll hand punch the holes. So we're just getting one.
Yeah. So there's a lot when it comes to dies. There's lots of different kinds of dies. But basically what I will do is use our dies in conjunction with the paper patterns that I've made. So Nick will cut everything out for me for the most part using the dies. Then he'll like do some prep work and then hand that stuff off to me. And then I'm using the paper patterns from there to like mark where my magnet goes, to mark where I have to bend the leather here, or mark where I start my stitching line, or what have you.
And like notes and stuff. Well, if she creates a pattern and then I go to use it, I have a lot of questions because she doesn't write it for anyone else, right?
Right, which is, yeah.
So there was, I can remember a couple times there was like, let's just say 4 sets of holes, and she knew which 2 to use, and I didn't, and I messed a couple things up because of that. Yeah. And we edited them.
But to edit paper patterns, I usually am just like either writing like no or little notes like this one. This is a perfect example. This has lots of notes on it. Like, well, it's backwards for you guys, but no, yes. This is an old pattern.
Framed original patterns might be a nice artwork for the brick and mortar.
Ooh, cool. I love that idea.
That would be cool.
But yeah, there's lots of. I always try to label all my pattern pieces now. I've gotten more into the habit of it. Like, what bag is this for? Because once in a while things could, especially when you're dealing with lots of patterns, things can
some
get.
Some of them have the original names
moved.
for the bags on them.
Oh yeah,
which is
like
really funny.
handbag
Handbag one.
Yeah.
Handbag 3.
So I try to, and even if I don't know the exact name of it yet, like you said, like I'll just make up a name, and so they're all of the pattern pieces will have that name on it, so that if it somehow gets put somewhere else by accident, that I can get that back to where it goes.
So once she makes an O tag pattern and the bag's made a couple times, and then the pattern's solidified, we'll get dies made.
Right.
So you can scan those in and send them to your die maker so that you know it's going to be correct.
Right. So that's the other piece of it, is that typically to get to the point of a die, you could, with some die makers, just send them literally like scans of your patterns. But typically what I do is I'll scan the pattern and then I'll take that into Illustrator, and I'll make an Illustrator file out of each pattern piece to make my dies. That way, I can make sure that it's like the right measurements. And usually, like when I'm doing that, I've scanned them into Illustrator, I've got my ruler with me, and I've got all my pattern pieces, and I've got the rulers up in Illustrator, and I'm just double checking all of those measurements to make sure they're right, because I have screwed up dies in the past, and it is an expensive mistake that you don't want to make.
It's more frustrating because there's a lead time on them. It's not like, oh, I'll just get another one, and like they're like,
and they're expensive,
$100 each, so
and shipping
at least plus shipping.
Yeah.
So it like anything, it's a frustrating mistake to make, which we've made a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to when you're looking at something digitally, it can look correct, but the scale could be wrong slightly.
Right.
Which is what happens.
And sometimes we'll zoom out to like 100%, and I'll literally like put the pattern piece on the computer screen to make sure like, okay, this is correct.
Super practical tips today. I need to come back and watch the recording later. Thanks, H&H.
Yeah, this was Nick's idea. You can thank him.
You're welcome. I was trying to like get more focused a little bit because we just ramble.
We tend to ramble. It's true.
Which is funny if you know us, if you know me.
Accurate.
Let's see. Who do you use to make your dies? So we use a company out of Texas called Texas Custom Dies.
Yes.
They just happen to be the very first die maker we worked with, and we like the quality of their work.
Yep. Their steel rule dies, the reason we like their dies is, one, they last forever. We've never had a die break ever. And they're fully open, so as I showed you guys a minute before, you can, did I make a thumb up?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You can see through them so that you can avoid any like scarring or scratches that you might want to avoid on the hide. And yeah, but the one piece of advice we always do give to anyone who's thinking about getting dies made is that they're very heavy, and because of that they can be expensive to ship. So if you have a local die maker or anyone that's just generally closer to you physically, it's going to be cheaper shipping. Obviously for us, we live in Pennsylvania, our dies are coming from Texas, so it is expensive to get them shipped, but we do just really love their quality, so we tend to stick with them, or we do stick with them.
For me, also giving it a NR, like 1626, so I know my patterns are complete NR.
What does the NR stand for?
I don't know. But I'm imagining like it's just like a date or...
Right, like, yeah, like it's
a number. So like 1 of 6, 2 of 6, 3 of 6, 4 of 6. So like...
Oh, like you're making versions of it. Is that what you mean?
Well, I mean like, if I have 6 pieces in this pattern.
That makes sense. Got it.
That's good.
Yeah.
We don't do that, but...
No, it's smart.
It is a good idea. This person also asks where we get our dies from. Sorry. NR equals numbers. Okay.
Oh, got it.
Numbering.
Okay. I'm trying to think what else.
So there's 6 total parts to the bag. Yeah.
Oh, this is just another thing. This is an old pattern, but I can show you guys something that I've done in the past. And I still do. And I do it much differently than this piece is done, but it's fine. When you have a piece of fabric, leather, whatever, and then you want to be able to always put the pocket in the same place, you can cut out like little tiny triangle, and because we work with leather, I just take my little bone folder and I'll kind of like, or you could use like an awl, and just like scribe it basically into the leather. Just a little corner, tiny corner for you to always line that pocket up in the exact same spot. You can see that I messed this up and like changed it over time. What else? On this, like, I'll cut little windows out for where our stamp is gonna go. So when we go to do our gold foil stamp or embossed stamp, I literally put this on the press and I'll put the little stamp in there, or I'll line it all up, so that way I can do it over and over and over again.
This would be like if you have a 3D printer, or if you have like a 3D router, you can make little insets, so you can put your piece exactly in the same spot.
Same idea.
Like a jig.
Yeah, so what I do is, here, I'll grab
This is the cheap way to do it.
this one. This is also helpful too, actually. Let me show you this piece. So this is our mini clovey. I'm working on a bunch of mini cloveys right now, actually. And you can see that I put this little pop hole here, so that's for our stamp to go. And then you can see I've got tape here, so I always stick this into our what's it called? Quick print?
Quick print.
It's
press.
our hot press that we stamp our bags with our logo on it, right? So I stick that in there, I get it lined up, I like bring it down, make sure it's gonna line up, then I tape it down to the metal plate that's there. And then that way, you know, I stamp a piece, I open up the flap, it's gonna be taped in there, stick a new piece in, put it down, stamp it again. That way it's just always lined up. The other thing is, so this bag, this is essentially both the front and back panel look like this. This, let's pretend it's the back panel. This little cutout here is for me to line up the lid. So there's a lid that goes over the bag this way, or this way. And so again, you can just like scribe this little opening into your leather, and when you go to put the lid in there, you can just line it right up. And it's, you know, you just kind of take your lid and scooch it down just this tiny little smidge, and you won't see that line anymore. And it'll be in the right place.
Well, that's the same idea as using one pattern piece for two different panels. This is a great live. Stars, stars, stars.
Trying to see. I feel like I could just grab any pattern piece and be like, what did I do on this one?
Yeah.
This is helpful information.
So, I think, what's the difference between patterning like a leather piece of leather or a bag
Or
of leather
fabric.
or fabric? Like,
It's
there's a
a
pretty
big
big
difference. So, yeah, there is a big difference. Fabric, you just get away with a lot more. You can make a hole and mess it up, and just pull the stuff out, and so
I find fabric confusing because you have to have seam allowance on there.
you have to have seam allowance when you make a bag as well.
Yeah, but
It's different depending on how you're making the bag. It's
True.
very, yeah. Let me just go over this one thing really quick, because I think this is super helpful, and it's something that I like struggled with for a little while, and once I figured it out, I was like, I'm a freaking idiot. I should have just done this way all along.
she's
So
so kind to herself.
when I made this, basically like, so I've got my center line, as you can see, and then I figured out, basically I work on like one side at a time, right? So I'm like, okay, this is gonna be my curve. I got that all worked out. Now you could like fold it in half and trace the other side. I wouldn't do that. What I do is I cut out, because I've got my center line, I just cut out the one half, right? And then I use the piece that I've cut off, and I flip it over, and again line it back up with my center line, and now I can trace this side out. Does that make sense? That way it's like a mirror image of everything, and you're not folding anything, you always want to work off that center line. That's why it's so important to start with that center line. So again, it's like, here's my center line, let's say I cut this side out, and I cut down this way, and I cut up this way, and then I take this leftover remaining piece and flip it over, line it back up with the center line, and now I can trace out this side. Hopefully that makes sense.
Do you make multiple copies of your pattern in case one you're using gets damaged or it gets worn out? We have some of the originals from 2017, 2016.
Yeah.
And
I don't think I've ever.
I think the only ones that have worn out even a little bit are like the ones that are folded multiple
Yes.
times.
Yeah.
But most patterns don't have a fold in them.
Right. And I'm typically, for the most part, I'm not using the pattern to cut the piece out.
Right.
Because we use dies. So, because you can, like, I'd say, yeah, those are the two things that tend to go on like a pattern piece would be anything that's folded or that I've used to cut stuff out like a lot.
And when we're not using them, we clip the whole thing together like this. I'm trying to. This to me was probably one of the most worn out ones.
Yeah, and that's also one of the first ones ever. We're gonna have pattern pieces
So
everywhere.
like you can see us.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out this like where things
But
would fold. I think with
because
that.
we get dies made, we can just cut one out of oak tag and then
Yeah, we've done that.
redo it.
Right, which Nick did here. So he literally clicked it out. Because you can, once you have your die, you can also use the dies to cut the paper pattern if you want. That way it's exactly the same as the leather you're going to be working with. The other things I do would be like on here, you can see these little marks. So that's going to be where my magnet goes in. It depends on the type of magnet you're using, but like that particular type of magnet I put in with the little teeth. What else? Oh, I had one. I lost my thought. Oh, that's what I was gonna do. For gussets, typically I'll mark where like any sort of hardware is gonna go or attached. You definitely put a filter on. I look like really tan all of a sudden.
Sorry, everyone.
It's fine. Now I look my pale self.
I wish I could like customize where things are and just take all the buttons off so I wouldn't mess it up.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll put punches in for like, hardware is going to attach here. I don't make my gusset the actual length of the full gusset because that would be like a huge piece of paper that's going to be annoying. So I didn't actually write it on here because again, we have a die for this, so it's fine. But the original one that I made, because I can tell Nick cut this out with the what's it called? Dies. But on the original one I made, I just wrote down how long that piece needs to be. I do that on lots of things. Anything that's going to be super long that I'm like, this is unnecessary, I'll just make an end for it and write down how long it needs to be. What else? Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have any questions? Because I've just like said a bunch of stuff.
Maybe an odd question, but do you do hardware first and then patterns, or do you make the size choices and then search for good hardware to design? Yeah.
That's a great question. So at this point, for the most part, we kind of like have our hardware set, right? Like we use, for the most part, we're using the same zippers, we're using the same rivets, we're using the same magnets. We recently added 2 different new types of closures. One is like the button, and the other is the turn lock. And so for those, I'm trying to remember, I really focus on the size of the bag first.
Yeah.
That is always kind of the number one place I'm starting. Like I want the size of the bag to make sense, for it to fit on the body and make sense and not be too big or too small or whatever, what have you, and that it will fit whatever it is I'm imagining someone's going to put in there. And then I will go into hardware and closures. But like I said, because we kind of already have our language of hardware figured out, I know for the most part, like, okay, this bag, it's gonna, any rivets are gonna be this size rivet or this size Chicago screw or whatever it might be, because that's just what we use in our collection.
That's what we like.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes back to talking about like design language and creating a collection where you really want like, okay, in our collection we are going to use these colors. Our hardware will always be brass for us, right? But it could be silver for someone, or we're going to use silver and brass. Whatever it might be, whatever your design decisions are. I try to stick to those things always because it's going to have the same language. It's going to look, no matter what bag you end up making, it'll still have essentially your design DNA in it, right? Just like, for us, I tend to design very structured bags. That's a part of it too. or the way we finish an edge. We always sand bevel burnish paint. Like, that's what we do. It's the same sort of thing with the hardware. I try to keep that cohesiveness.
So if you figure out a hardware you like,
Yeah.
you can then have that in mind also when you're designing,
Yeah.
and then kind of create around it as well, so it kind of plays on itself.
Right. But when I'm making a bag, like, once I get that front piece together, if I'm like, okay, well, I know I want, like, a lot of our bags, we have the brass ring, which you can see on, like, our mini berries. So for instance, actually, this is a good example. So we actually designed the big berry before we designed the mini berry. And so I used this ring on there, right? And then I designed the mini berry, and I stuck the same ring on this bag, and it looked ridiculous. And I realized, like, when you go from big to small, sometimes you really have to consider how things will kind of, like, come together. And so the ring on this bag is just like the next ring size down from this one. So a lot of times it's just like putting the hardware literally on your paper pattern and being like, does this make sense?
That's one of the good things. We get hardware from Buckle Guy, so you can order one of something,
Yes.
and then, like, if you order one of 3 or 4 sizes and you put it up there and you're like, this is the one.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it easier.
Yes. Another patterning tip that I just remembered. So let's say you've designed let's just pretend you've designed a rectangular bag, and you love it, it's great, and now you made a small one, and now you want to make a bigger one. The way you would scale that up on paper, if you're not using a computer, is drawing. So you'd put your rectangle on your cutting board that has all of your grid on there, right? And you would draw a diagonal line from the bottom right corner to the top left corner. And that diagonal, you would continue past your small rectangle. Yeah, there you go. And so now, if any point I land on here, on this piece, if I draw a line here,
Parallel.
and I go down from that same point, it will be the same scale. It would be the same scale no matter what. It's just bigger or smaller. So that's a way to scale up, scale down. It's a lot that comes with, I'd say, especially going from bigger to smaller, which is for some reason what I end up doing typically, because things get tighter when you scale out. So
Your design voice is strong and clear. You always know an
Thank
H&H
you.
bag when you see it.
that's really
See,
good
that's
to hear.
an amazing compliment.
I feel like we got that kind of like
Thank you
from
for the answer.
Yeah. We kind of got that idea from 2 different places. One, art school. We both went
Yes.
for illustration, and like having a style was very important to that. Of course, in school you really want to like explore and try out lots of different things, figuring out like your medium, the way you want to do. It's a lot. But the idea is by your senior year, you're meant to like hone in what your style is as far as like illustration goes, for like your painting or drawing style or
You're
however
supposed
you
to be
work.
going into your professional artist
Right,
career.
and people are coming to you because they know you do this thing, right? And so you can apply that to anything else. And it's kind of, and then I worked in fashion for 10-ish years, and it is the same sort of thing within that, and kind of knowing the style. A question pops up on there. Does that always happen?
Yes.
Okay. Just saw that for the first time. Yeah, so it's the same sort of idea. You know, when you're designing a collection, it's all about kind of, you can call it brand DNA or your style or whatever it might be. I like the design voice or design language because it is kind of a language that you're developing. It's a way for you to both make those design decisions when you design something new, and a way for you to talk about it to someone else.
I think people struggle a lot with editing back.
Ooh, yeah.
You'll put too much on there, and you'll say this is good enough. But if you took away like an element, it would actually make the whole thing look better.
So this pattern that you pulled,
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened with this bag.
Yeah, too many pocket situations.
No, I was like, I had made the Margot bag with the wooden dowel, and I had made, what was the other?
Oh, you put
There
because you
was
put the dowel
something
on the
else.
first version of that.
Yes.
And that was weird.
I knew I wanted to. Yeah, I was like, well,
And
the
tassels.
dowel. Yeah, because it was. I knew I wanted to do the tassel strap on that bag, and I was like, oh, but I put the dowel on this other bag. I'll just add that in and put all the things together. No,
Yeah.
that looks like a
Way
crazy
too much.
bag. I need to add it.
Do you use dies for all pieces in production runs or patterns for limited runs? What size is your die press? We have the bigger of the weaver presses. I can't remember what the tonnage is.
Does it say it on there?
Maybe. Look.
I can look at it.
But it has like good size on it. Some of the longer ones we have to like do multiple times, but for the most part things fit on there very nicely.
I see no words.
Okay.
Oh wait, you're. Nope.
Nope.
Doesn't say.
So when we started, we were just using paper patterns for like new designs, and we'll probably, like I'm imagining for some of our newer bags coming out, we'll probably get specific dies made of the harder pieces to cut out.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, that's.
so that we're not putting a whole bunch of money into something that we're not sure if it's going to work yet.
Right, so that's another way to do it. So the way we did it when we first got started, obviously we were investing way less money into things because we were just getting going and seeing if it even made sense to do. We would just have paper patterns, I'd hand cut everything. Once we started getting dies, we would just get dies of the things that, like Nick said, are really hard to cut out. So for instance,
So like this edge.
right, so like if exactly, so with that new made bag, like we're definitely gonna get
The top.
the lid is gonna be a die for sure. But like the front panel and back or bottom panel, which is essentially just a rectangle, you know, you could get away with using your pattern piece and easily just quickly cutting a rectangle. That's a way to make it more economical, is just getting dies made of the things that you know are like the most annoying to cut out.
If you've gotten dies made before, you can break it down by how much it costs per linear inch, and then you can kind of estimate yourself.
How
You
much
can
it's
get a
gonna
quote
cost.
from them too. But You
Yeah.
can estimate how much it's going to cost so you don't have to bug anybody. And then,
Yeah.
go ahead.
The other thing that we do is, so like there are certain things that you're just gonna repeat on many bags, right? So like the little tabs that we use to hold the D-ring on, it's the same tab for like 3 or 4 or 5 different bags.
So we just have one.
So we
die.
just have one die, and we just know like, okay, we just use this for lots of different
If
bags.
you were working with a company to produce for you, you probably would have to just have that made 5 times.
Which is so silly. Yeah.
It
But
depends on
it
who you're
makes,
working with.
yeah, I get it. But like, yeah, so for us, we just, those tabs, we have 2 different tabs I think that we use, and we just have those 2 dies and we just use it on all the bags.
And then if you get an estimate of your dies, you can break it down. If you've done enough launches, you say, I know I'm going to sell 5, and then I can break it down. My dies cost me $500. So if I sell, well, maybe estimate it by the year, what you think you're going to sell. And then you can see this die cost me $2 per design for like every time I sell
Oh,
it.
you can like put it into the cost of the bag, is
Yeah.
that what you're saying?
I mean, you should do that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard to do that without information.
Knowing, yeah.
I only use solid brass and stainless steel. I don't like anything that is plated. We agree with you.
Yes, we only use solid brass.
Plating can look nice but
It doesn't
it
last.
always wears off, right? So
Yeah.
you're gonna see what's under it. Yeah, brass is great because it's like infinitely recyclable. Also, I just saw a video where you're edging a bag. What brand edger was that? Black handle, long blade. Black handle, long blade.
Oh, he means like yeah, Sky or Beveler, sorry. It's a Palo Santo.
Oh, the Palo Santo edge beveler. I forgot that we had the
This guy.
black handled one.
Yeah, me too. Even though I'm using it, I don't know why. Yeah, this is highly recommend. Just could not recommend more. Palo Santo beveler. If you've used any other beveler for the most part, when you get this in your hands and you use it, you're going to laugh. That's literally what I did when I used this for the first time because it's so easy. It was like a hot knife through butter Meanwhile, before I was using craft
Spoons.
tools, and
Spoons.
and like my hand would hurt afterwards. It's ridiculous. So highly recommend Palo Santo. We use the +1 size.
1 plus.
1 plus whatever. It says +1 if I'm reading down. So that's why it's gonna be backwards. I don't even know if you can see that. You can't. Whatever. Yeah.
Thanks. You got it.
The other great thing about them is
Palo Santo.
you can take the blade out and send it back to get sharpened by them.
And I think District Leather also sells the sharpened blades, so you can just replace the blades if you're sending them out. So, cool. I'm trying to think of it. Is there anything else? Because we might be wrapping it up soon.
Yeah. If you guys have
'Cause
questions.
we're at 45 minutes. So yes.
Yes. If you guys have any questions about any of the stuff we talked about, please do. Really quick, while you guys think of any questions, where are we with red? Are we done?
Oh jeez. Boda is.
It's Boda week, right?
It is Boda week.
Okay.
For red. Bridal.
And this is the last bag.
Last bag.
Okay.
Last bridal. Last red. Last.
So this week you can order our Boda bag in red. I don't have one to show you in red, but our Boda bag in red bridal. This is the last week. It's the last week of red. It's bridal. It's Boda bag. This is the last week.
And next week
And
starts a
then-
combo of milled Maeve crossbodies in the standard colors. This is burgundy, and the new burgundy we got in is a little darker than this, so just heads up on that.
Yeah, we were working on getting that color just right.
And then we're going to begin chestnut, and we haven't even decided what bag's going to go first, but I
Yeah.
have a feeling it's going to be Minute
Minute
Maid,
Maid, yeah, typically that's how we go.
Which is our new color. Don't fall.
Almost did.
But yeah, feel free to continue asking us questions and comments.
Oh yeah, we'll try to answer
About pattern
anything
making
we can there.
specifically, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Also, if there's a subject that you guys want us to talk about, please put that in the comments too, because this is just one that Nick pulled out of his hat to talk about, but it obviously makes for a way more fun and informative live.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if there's any sort of subject that you guys want us to cover, even if it seems like we wouldn't have a lot to talk about, I bet we can ramble for a while.
We'll see you guys next week, and maybe with one of your topics.
Yeah. Is there any questions in there that we missed?
Nope, just
Okay.
a lot of thank yous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
See you later.
Thank you. Bye, guys. It was fun.
That was a good one.